Once you've knit across the correct number of stitches, you're going to introduce a stitch marker. I'm using some that look like little circles. You can see right here. This is a stitch marker. It's just a single ring of plastic. You'll be able to buy those at your local craft store. You just slide it onto your needle like so, and that will mark your position. Okay, so once you've got your stitch marker on, you'll progress to the next portion. We're going to do a different kind of increase now. When we did the dishcloth, we did an increase by doing a yarn over. We brought the yarn from the back to the front and then continued to knit across. This time we're going to do a different kind of an increase that will not leave a hole like it left the hole for the design on the washcloth. So this time we're going to knit from the front and the back of the stitch before we slide it off of the second needle. So watch closely. We'll slide our needle in from the front, do everything on the stitch except for take it off of the needle. Then enter again into the back of the stitch and complete a second knit. And then slide the combined stitches off of the needle. Now you've just finished an increase without any kind of a hole or pattern. Do that a second time. So knit from the front. Don't slide it off the second needle. Come around and knit into the back of the stitch. And then slide the combined stitches off of the needle. Now we're ready to introduce another stitch marker. Just slide it right onto your needle again. And then continue the rest of the row with your regular knit stitch. The number of stitches remaining at this point should be the same as the number of stitches you started before you introduced the first stitch marker. So in my case, that's 17 stitches. When you get to the end of the row, you'll need to continue in the stocking pattern. And that means when you turn it around, you'll purl the entire next row. When you get to a stitch marker, just transfer it from one needle to the next. Keep it in its same location. Okay, I'm now approaching the stitch marker. I'm going to continue to knit right up to the stitch marker, which would be right here, and then I'm just going to transfer the marker from one needle to the other, and then I'm going to continue purling the rest of this row until I come to the second stitch marker. And I'm going to slide that from the first needle onto the second as well, and then just continue to the end of the row. As we get to the end of the row and turn back around, we're ready to do another knit row. Once again, we're going to knit right up to the stitch marker, and when we get to the other side of the stitch marker with the very first stitch, we're going to increase again by knitting in the front and the back of the stitch. We'll continue to knit across the row until we get to the last stitch before the second stitch marker, and we'll do another increase there by knitting in the front and the back of the stitch, and then we'll continue to knit across the rest of the row. Okay, I'm now approaching the stitch marker. I'm transferring it from one needle to the next, and on this first stitch I'm going to do an increase again. So I'm going to knit in the front of the stitch, then without taking it off the needle I'm going to wrap around and come into the second part of the stitch, the back, and then I'll slide the combined stitches off of the needle. Then I'll continue to knit across until there's only one stitch left before the stitch marker, and then again I will increase by knitting in the front, wrapping around in the back, and then sliding that off. I'll transfer the second marker and knit across the rest of the row. You'll continue in this fashion, knitting one row and increasing on each stitch closest to the stitch marker until you have a total of 14 stitches between the two stitch markers.
Thanks for watching. Click on the next step or replay to watch another video, and please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can also visit AmericanKnitter.com to purchase the knitting DVD set.